Welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Giants. So OTAs are still going on. This is the last week of them before they have mandatory minicamp, which is for the rookies and the vets. So in the meantime, let's talk through some more OTAs because there have been more highlights and there have been more takeaways. So let's start with the touchdowns. Russell Wilson hit Theo Johnson in a 7-on-7. Jameis Winston threw two different touchdown passes to Bo Collins, who is the undrafted free agent wide receiver out of Notre Dame. And then Tommy DeVito also threw a touchdown to Montreal, Washington. He is a guy that I haven't really had high expectations for, but I've seen him mentioned a little bit throughout OTAs catching some touchdowns. So it sounds like he's getting a bit involved, which is great. The Giants safeties have been holding strong with their turnovers. Holland got another interception during 7-on-7s and returned that for a touchdown. And then defensive lineman Chauncey Golston had a pass breakup, and then he was able to tip it to himself and pull it down for an interception. So he's a guy that I'm excited about, and I know we have Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, but I think we need to talk a little bit more about Chauncey Golston. So he's something that when training camp hits and we start to see some preseason games, we'll definitely dive more into him because he was a great signing. So much so that his buddy at the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, was upset about it. So love to hear that. Wilson spoke very highly of Jalen Hyatt, who has been getting way more involved in practices, so I'm excited to see more out of him. Theo Johnson, Bellinger, and Thomas Fidone, all three of the tight ends, have caught passes from all four different quarterbacks between 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s. Jordan Humphrey, another wide receiver, caught a few catches, some from Jackson Dart, some from Jameis Winston. And then Paulson Adebo has gotten involved with a pass breakup and what would have been a sack during 11-on-11s. Cordell Flott is also a guy whose name has come up quite a bit throughout OTAs. So I know last year he was kind of on everyone's shit list, I think. And also, there's been some talk about maybe him being a cut that the Giants make. We'll talk about the cuts in a minute, but I don't think he's going to be one of them, and I'll tell you why when we get there. So overall, practices seem to be going well, but I want to talk about what Russell and Juan Dale said to the media because they gave us some good tidbits. So Russell, of course, was asked about Jackson Dart and about the quarterback room. He said Jackson's been great overall. He's a great worker. The quarterback room as a whole is wonderful. They're very focused, very communicative, and they're always sharing with each other, what they're seeing and the reason, for why they made this decision or XYZ. He's asked about Kafka, said that he's super sharp, and the fact that he played quarterback in this league is very significant. He really likes that about them, and he said that they have great communication and a good relationship so far. He was asked about the defense, what they bring to the table, what he's seen on tape, and he spoke very highly of the defense and said, they did pretty well last year. Obviously, having Dexter, Burns, and Kayvon is amazing, but now you add Abdul Carter into that mix, you add Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo to the secondary, and you're talking about what could be a very talented and impressive defense. So I feel the same way as you do, Russ. Let's see it on the field. He said that, one of his focuses as a veteran and as a leader has been to really build up the camaraderie, and he's focused a lot on teamwork. That's something that he says repeatedly throughout his pressers. And, he said that one of the ways that he does that is by coordinating these dinners. So, we talked about this, that we saw the picture with the offensive linemen, wide receivers, or quarterbacks and running backs, I think, was the crew. But that's something that they do a lot. And Juan Dale also said, that he was asked what they do to kind of foster that sense of community and whatnot. And he said, we eat a lot together. So it sounds like they do a lot of team dinners, which is great. It gives them the opportunity in a casual setting, a comfortable setting, to sit back and just kind of talk about football and life and everything like that. And, with that being talked about, Russell said that, what he thinks is so important about OTAs is that everyone just loves football. And that's obviously something that they all have in common. But something that he's really seen from this group is that they are all ball. And Abdul Carter is one of them. We know this about Nubin and Neighbors and, Phillips, some of the guys that they drafted last year, is that's really the focus. And that's what's so important about OTAs is that you're building a tight-knit culture. You're building a culture that wants to win football games, and guys whose sole focus is day in and day out getting better, improving, and ultimately winning football games. So let's hope that all translates. It all sounds well and good right now, but until we see it on the field, it doesn't mean anything. Lastly, he said that Dave's Kafka and Shea Tierney all have really good communications. They're all involved a lot, of course, when going through the offense and quarterbacks. They're good teachers of the game. And then, of course, he just said that the dedication to the teammates, both between him and the dedication from the coaches, is something that he's seen a lot since being with the Giants and something that he really values. So, like I said, it's all well and dandy, but we want to see it in wins. So next up, Juan Dale spoke to the media. I feel like we haven't heard from him in a while, so here are some highlights that I thought about what he said. He was asked about what it's like to have a new quarterback, and he said, "It's been nice." Russell tells him exactly what he wants from him out there on the field, where he wants to see him in place, and which routes he wants to be running and where he wants to see him. So Juan Dale mentioned this a couple times throughout the interview, which I thought was interesting, is that Russell is very specific and he tells him exactly where he wants to be. And he said he really likes that and values that in a quarterback, is that he knows where to be and he knows what to do. And I think, Russell has a lot of experience in the league, and I think that's something that can probably be taken maybe the wrong way. And I wonder if that's something that's why we've heard these issues of Russell Wilson in the past, is that, he seems to be this type of like, I know what I'm talking about, which, to be fair, I think he does a lot of the time, and has a lot of experience. And, I think that maybe some people along the way took that wrong. And I think when you've got a team like the Giants, whose players want to play well and want to win games, to have a quarterback who has that experience and is saying, listen, I'm sure he's looking at the tape last year, like, there's a lot of things that went wrong here. And, from my experience and what I've done and what's helped us win football games, how can we translate that here? So I hope that that's the attitude with which he is approaching it from. And I think that if you're a guy like Juan Dale and you're any of these wide receivers, you're looking at it as like, this guy has a ton of experience. He knows where I should be. He's lining me up in the right spot and he's leading me to the ball. And, I don't, when I talk about Russ and I talk about these things, it's not because I want to shit on the past Giants quarterbacks. I don't really think that's fair. But I do think that obviously that's the benefit of having a quarterback that has so much experience. And, you can see that that's one of the reasons why the Giants love Russell Wilson and why they brought him in, is the thought process is that he's really going to be able to help a lot of these young guys, especially the wide receivers, develop. And for a guy like Juan Dale, who's in the last year of his contract, I'm sure he's looking to have a good year so he can get paid, whether it's the Giants or someone else. So on building chemistry, he said it's been great. He said it started, as soon as him and Russell went to Atlanta and started doing some throwing and working out together there. He said that it's been great ever since, that's how they're really fostering their relationship and communication and building rapport from a wide receiver quarterback standpoint. On asked about his usage, he said that he definitely believes he will be used differently this year. He said he thinks he'll be used more. He said he'll be used in more versatile ways. On the outside and with deep throws, he's focused on getting open and being available to quarterbacks. That's his job, and that's what he's focused on. He said Russ is very consistent. He's the same guy every single day. He coaches them up. He's in here early. He's dedicated. He's got good work ethic, all the things that Juan Dale likes about him. He also said he's strong, detailed, and motivated, all things you also want in a quarterback. He said that when Russell throws the ball, his deep ball drops nicely in the bucket. He said that the shorter run routes and the balls that are on the short routes come in like a pillow. They are easy to catch. He said that when asked about the wide receiver room, so I thought this was a good point by Ryan Dunleavy, is, 10 out of the 11 offensive players are the exact same as last year. So, why should anyone believe that you guys will be good? And this is not exactly how Ryan Dunleavy put it. He wasn't that rude, but you get what I'm saying. And Juan Dale was like, look, it stems from the quarterback, and we had a decent offensive line and some progress last year. Obviously, things needed to be improved upon. But he said, I have confidence in our wide receivers. We are putting ourselves in a position to succeed, and it's up to us to go out there, get open, and make plays for our quarterback. They get it in our hands. It's up to us to take it a step further than that. So I like that Juan Dale's focusing on, he's going to do his job and I'm going to do my job. And ultimately, that's hopefully going to translate to touchdowns and in turn wins. He's asked about Jackson Dart, of course. He said that he's funny and goofy, but he has a good work ethic. He's resilient, and that, guys like Juan Dale have said to him, you're an NFL quarterback now. You have to do things differently. And the follow-up question was, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, we've been telling him, like, you're the quarterback. You have to get up. What John Gruden said. You have to get up to see another play and live another down. You can't be, sliding, which he basically never did. You can't be running into guys left and right, and you can't be diving. So Juan Dale specifically mentioned the diving thing, but basically, like, you have to stay healthy. That's really important to you as the quarterback. Now that you're in the NFL, you can't do the same shit that you did in college, which I love that Juan Dale called him out for that. I think it's great. He said that as an older wide receiver in the room, he feels that it's his job to be a resource to the younger players, reviewing routes, answering questions, being whatever that he can be for them. And he was asked about whether or not he cares about who calls the plays. And I thought this was fascinating. So he said he doesn't care who calls the plays, but he was asked specifically by Paul Dottino, does he hope that there are less of him running 6 yards, turning around, and catching the ball? And he laughed and said, yes, I hope there's a lot less of that this year. And he said he doesn't care who calls the plays. He's focused on getting out and getting open. So I love it. Like I said, we don't hear a lot from Juan Dale, and I'd like to hear from these wide receivers, especially a guy like Juan Dale, who I think has a lot of potential, knowing that we've got a new quarterback in the building. So last up, let's talk about who we think the Giants are going to cut to save some money. So there's been talks that Cordell Flott is going to be a cap casualty. The biggest names that I've seen are Cordell Flott, Nacho, Bobby O, and who was the fourth one? Oh, Devin Singletary. I don't think Devin Singletary is getting cut. We've already talked about this. It's not enough money to really help out the Giants. It's, $250,000, which to us is a lot of money. To the Giants, it's not. So I think they also really value having a veteran there. It's his last year with the Giants. He's going to be here. Bobby O is primed, I think, and in good shape to have a comeback year. I'd be shocked if they ended up cutting him. On top of that, none of the other linebackers that are on this team are better than Bobby O, so they better keep him. Cordell Flott, too, I don't see him going anywhere, mostly because they finally have some depth at the cornerback position. I think Cordell Flott is a good part of that, and I just don't think they're in a position to get rid of him, even if it's going to save them a couple $1 million. I think that if anything, they're going to start to restructure some guys. I'm sure Dexter Lawrence is next, Andrew Thomas, if they haven't done that already, to free up some cap space. And then, they have 90 guys on the team right now, so once they start to cut people, all of that money is going to add up. I think that Nacho is probably the only likely option that could be cut in a position that will save the Giants a decent amount of money. They'll save a few $1 million if they cut him. And, I do think they have some depth at the offensive line. I think until we see these guys out there, it's easy to say that, we're okay with guys like Elijah Chapman and Jordan Riley and, DJ Davidson, who's coming off an injury, before, cutting Nacho. But I do think there are some options there, especially knowing that they have Roy Robertson Harris, they have Darius Alexander, they have Chauncey Golston, they have Abdul Carter. There's going to be a lot of rotations on that line. So I think they're in a decent spot. And honestly, I think Nacho is probably the only predictable cut that I see outside of, some of the UDFAs and guys like that. So let me know who you guys think the Giants should cut, if any, and we will be back tomorrow with more Giants.